Welcome students. This session is for BA second year English Literature paper first, that is Poetry and Drama. In this paper you have a poem by T.S. Eliot, The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock. I have completed more than half of the poem in my previous sessions, and in this session we'll conclude this poem. So let's continue with this poem. Let's have a recap. The key part of its effectiveness is we cannot ever arrive at final analysis of the poem. So this is the key aspect of this poem, that we as readers, we don't know the final analysis, what exactly the narrator is trying to say. Like all great works of art, it remains open to new interpretations and can mean lots of different things to different readers. So the best part and the interesting part of this poem is that it is open to multiple interpretations. You can derive a lot of meanings out of this poem, and with different readers, it has different interpretations. So it's a great work of art in this manner. Prufrock is a modern day urban speaker who talks frankly about his failures. We see that he's talking about his failures, he's talking about his weaknesses, he's talking about his moments in which he felt scared. So he's a modern day urban speaker. We cannot always be sure what is he confiding to us is actually being uttered. There is something in his mind, there's a question in his mind, but what exactly this question is, we don't know. We may instead have a direct line to his thoughts, to the inside of his heads. Though we have a direct line to his thoughts, he's speaking out his mind in front of us, and we know what is going inside in his head, but still we don't know what question is he about to ask, and what is he trying to say or disclose to the women he loves. It is an attempt by modernist writers to encourage us to confront the realities of modern world. And this character somewhere brings us as readers very close to the realities of modern world, where a lot of things we think but we don't utter because we know that we'll be judged and we'll be misinterpreted, will be misunderstood by people. And this is the hesitation that is going on in the mind of this character Prufrock also. He is not able to utter that thought in his mind because he knows that he will be misinterpreted, and finally then he has to give a lot of clarifications for that. And he does not want to disturb the peace around with those clarifications. After all, how well do we know our friends? And this is the question. How well basically in our real lives we know our friends? We know each other at best imperfectly, and people don't tend to waltz into our lives announcing everything about them before they start to chatter to us about the weather. And this is very true, being reflected in this poem. Just as the people we in our life, we don't know much about the people. They don't tell each and everything about them to us, and we can easily talk to them about weather because we don't want to talk from their personal life, because that is going to somewhere disturb their peace around, and it may create a sort of a misunderstanding in our mind about that person. So it's better to remain silent on certain issues, and we are left to infer things, and that is what the love of J. Alfred Prufrock forces us to do. Just as we infer things in our real life, we try to guess what exactly is going around in our real life. The same thing makes this poem, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock, to us as readers, much as we do with real people we meet. It is the same thing with the real people we meet. The real people also don't disclose each and everything which they have in their mind in front of us, and so do we. We also don't share our life with others, because in modern times we have that hesitation of being misjudged or being understood differently. So this keeps us in our closed space, and though we want to share certain thoughts with people, but in order to be misunderstood, or maybe that later we need to give them explanations of exactly what we meant, we keep ourselves isolated from the outside world. And this individuality, or you can say this isolation or being cut off, emotionally from the outside world is the characteristics of modern times. Now let's continue with the text of the poem. Prufrock says, "No, I'm not Prince Hamlet, nor was meant to be. I'm an attendant lord, one that will do to swell a progress, start a scene or two, advise the prince, no doubt an easy tool, deferential, glad to be of use." Now, here Eliot makes reference to Shakespeare's play Hamlet, and he declares that I'm not a Prince Hamlet. And we know that in Shakespeare's Hamlet, Hamlet is also in that indecisive condition where he thinks that whether he should uh, murder his uncle who has taken the life of his father, and he remains in that hesitant condition throughout the play. And here also we see that Prufrock is in that condition that he is unable to discuss the very subject which he has in his mind, and the condition of his is quite a complicated one. It can also be interpreted that he does not considers himself as someone exceptional like Prince Hamlet. Rather, he considers himself as a very common man, and he compares here himself to Polonius, who is an attendant lord, and the only role of an attendant lord is to start a scene or two, and he calls himself somewhere cautious and meticulous, full of hard work. And here we see that he goes as far as calling himself an attendant, a very common person, instead of considering himself as someone special. Politic, cautious, and meticulous, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. So here we see that again he continues to compare himself to Polonius in a character in Shakespeare's Hamlet, which is a minor character in comparison to Hamlet, that's the main character of the tragedy of Shakespeare. And he says that I am an easy tool, and I am politic, cautious, and meticulous. I'm a hard worker, very cautious, just like Polonius is, and I'm a very common person, full of high sentence, but a bit obtuse. Though I look like as if I speak very highly about things, but basically I know that from inside I am a dull person. At times, indeed, almost ridiculous, almost at times the fool. So he goes to the extent of calling himself fool or foolish in the present scenario. So this shows that this character, Prufrock, does not hold himself in a very high esteem, and we see that he considers himself a common person, or at times he knows that he's a foolish person in the present scenario. I grow old, I grow old. I shall wear the bottoms of my trousers rolled. Shall I part my hair behind? Do I dare to eat a peach? I shall wear the white flannel trousers and walk upon the beach. I've heard the mermaids singing, each to each. I do not think that they will sing to me. Now, suddenly we find that the focus of this character has shifted from that question, that important question that he wishes to ask, to his own looks. Now he is being conscious of his looks. He's saying that he's growing old, and he wants to wear the trousers, the bottom of his trousers rolled up, just like young people. And then more closely, he thinks that should he part his hair behind? Do I dare to eat peach? All these things show that somewhere this character has diverted from that question, because he somewhere fears that rejection of that woman, and here he is only to distract himself. He is somewhere talking about these small things about his looks and about his choices, even to have a peach he is thinking for. And then he says that he is going to walk upon the beach. And with this walking on the beach, he is reminded of the mermaids. And when he refers here to the mermaids, where he says that I have heard the mermaids singing each to each, I do not think that they will sing to me. Here he feels so sad, and somewhere he makes a conclusion that these mermaids will not sing to him. He pities himself, we see in these lines, that in a way, mermaid represent the women coming and leaving the room. Early in the poem, we see that women coming and going, leaving the room, talking of Michelangelo. And there, he is not able to establish any sort of a connection with those women. In the same manner, here also he is feeling sad and pity because he thinks that mermaids are not going to speak to him, they are not going to sing to him, whereas they are singing to each other. I have seen them riding seaward on the waves, combing the white hair of the waves blown back when the wind blows the water white and black. Again, the image of mermaids continue over in these lines also. Mermaids riding seawards and their hair shining white, just like the waves are blown back. In the same manner, the hair of mermaids are blowing backwards as they're riding on the waves in the sea. And then he says, we have lingered in the chambers of the sea, by seagulls wreathed with seaweed, red and brown, till human voices wake us and we drown. So, in these last three lines, we have seen that Prufrock somewhere tries to face the reality, and up till now, he says that we have lingered in the chambers of sea. Somewhere he was in that imaginative condition, but now here he is absolutely ready to face reality. The poem ends with Prufrock hearing human voices. So suddenly, from hearing mermaids singing, we find him. Human voices wake us, he says, that human voices are waking him up. And we find that somewhere this entire poem could be a dream of Prufrock. And Prufrock, in his love for that woman, or his connection with the reader, we find him drowning in that, and maybe the whole poem appears to us as a dream, or it really drown us in this dream condition. It's absolutely upon us as readers that whether this whole poem was a reality of human life, or rather Prufrock was in a dreamlike condition, and we were drowning with him in that dreamlike state. And finally, we wake up with human voices. So this again is open to multiple interpretations. There can be a lot of meanings embedded inside, and we as readers, as we approach this poem has its interest, appears to us very interesting because of the multiple dimensions that can be given to this interesting work of Eliot. Now let's finally analyze this poem. Prufrock's fire and fury and rage, the most ardent emotions that were present in the last few stanzas, are reduced now to nothing. So finally, we see as the poem ends that all that fire that was there in Prufrock, all that anxiety, all that tension, all that struggle that was there to ask that question, to speak out his mind, and those deep emotions for that woman whom he loved, perhaps. In the last few stanzas, we see that they are now reduced to nothing because somewhere he has drifted his attention to his own looks. Once more, he shrinks away from the challenge of speaking his mind. We see that he somewhere hesitates and he diverts his mind instead of taking the challenge of speaking his own mind, of speaking to the women, and continues to destroy his own fledgling self-confidence by creating an imagery in the reader's mind so absurd that we perhaps start to share his own view of himself. We see that this character Prufrock, his self-confidence gets lower to that extent, and he creates such an images in mind of readers that we also start sharing view of Alfred Prufrock, and we think that it's absolutely useless to share one's thought to the world because there is a lot of judgment from people, and one is not always in that mood of giving clarifications. Once more, there is a presence of women, unattainable women, in this case symbolized by the mermaids. So that image of women coming and going and talking of Michelangelo, and somewhere that image of women is symbolized by the mermaids who are not going to sing to him, we find that for him, for Prufrock, women has been as unattainable as mermaids, with the power to ruin Prufrock's entire world. And this world of Prufrock is quite damaged by these image, and finally we see that his world of imagination, he comes out of that, and Eliot has written, "Till human voice wake us and we drown." And there is an imagery of Prufrock viewing himself, now miserable and old, white flannel trousers, reduced to the inactivity that is rendered throughout the poem in such a way that he wonders, do I dare to eat a peach? So throughout the poem, we see that now Prufrock is pitying himself. He is looking at himself as miserable and old and wearing those white flannel trousers. He is absolutely reduced to that inactivity. He is so indecisive in his condition, and he's so weak in his actions that we see him asking simple questions. Do I dare to eat a peach? Which does not require any dare at all. So here we see that with this reaction, we know that how weak he is and how cautious he is in this modern world. So this whole poem shows us character of Alfred Prufrock, and we as readers, we see in his mind that somewhere we are able to relate him to the modern conditions, or to the humans in the modern world. So that's the end of the poem. I think students, you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.